something I'd seen from the other NPCs from the House of Caden. Returning the boy's salute, I hefted him up in my arms, speaking quickly. "You did good, Eladir. Now, what do you say about us getting the hell out of here?" Before the kid could reply, a familiar voice bellowed out in rage behind me.
"You did this! This is all your fault, halfling!"
Grootgrak's skullcrusher spat at his feet in disgust as he faced me about 12 yards away. The orc was covered in black blood. Jagged wounds marred his muscular arms and legs where there were gaps ripped through his armor. Even his face was a battered and bleeding mess. But, worst of all, was his rage-filled wild eyes that bored into me like the promise of death. Even with everything he'd been through, the bastard still had half of his health left, which still left him a hit point bar that was at least double that of my own.
"I will shatter your bones. I will shred your innards. I swear you will die by my hands if it's the last thing I do."
Grootgrak roared, throwing his head back with his battle axes held over his head in each hand. In that split second, I knew what the orc was going to do next. Time seemed to slow as I spun around, giving it my best shot. Shouting to Theric, I threw Eladir up with all my strength just as Ulia's head peeked out over the battlement above. The look of horror on her face said it all. Behind me, I heard the hastening scrapes of the orc's claws on stone as the boss triggered his charge ability. There was only one chance to get this right. Not stopping my turn, I leapt into the air and tucked into a ball while whipping the shield off my back. I was reaching for the straps of my iron-reinforced defender when the orc slammed into me like a wrecking ball. The impact sent me ass over heels as I slammed to a stop seconds later against the stone wall with a meaty smack. Somewhere along the line, the air was blasted from my lungs as I dropped to the ground, gasping for breath. Still, the reduced pain threshold of the game gave me the edge I needed. Climbing to my knees, I managed to get my legs under me and raise my shield as the orc's war axes came crashing down on me like thunder. Blow after blow hammered at my shield as I somehow staggered back to my feet. Shrieking in rage, Grootgrak's skullcrusher slammed his axes together. Lifting the combined weapons over his head with both muscular arms, he struck with a mighty cross-slash. There was no time to dodge or even think. My body acted on muscle memory alone as I whipped my shield overhead quick as lightning. The impact of the two-handed blow buckled my shield as the wood exploded in a cloud of splinters. The remaining iron bracing bent around my arm like the twisted remains of a car crash, while the force of the blow sent me flying across the room. The goblins and undead battling in my path were blown from their feet as I crossed 20 feet in the blink of an eye. My flight was abruptly stopped a second later by a thick stone pillar. I hit the ground hard, floundering like a turtle stuck on its back as I weakly flailed, trying to climb to my knees. All that I remembered of the pillar was a white flash, and a moment of blackness as my HUD flashed a warning that I had a concussion debuff for 5 seconds. The room reeled around me as a bellow of rage nearby caught my wacky focus. My guts clenched in fear as I spotted Grootgrak's skullcrusher, charging directly for me with his beady red eyes filled with rage. The enormous orc was only moments away from cleaving me in two when my thoughts came back into focus with a snap as the concussion debuff disappeared from my interface. Immediately, I rolled to the side as the boss crunched to a stop behind me. With my head once again clear, I sprang to the attack. A brutal slash severed the fingers clutching the nearest war axe. As the orc roared in agony, I circled behind the boss and drove my brutal skull splitter deep into the back of the mob's knee. Grootgrak's response was instantaneous. Spinning around with a bellow, the orc backhanded me across the room. My hit points plummeted to a third as I slid across the stone floor on my back. Fumbling at my belt, I scooped up the last 4 minor healing potions and downed them in one go as the orc lumbered after me in a limping sprint. Obviously, the level 40 orc hadn't suffered a concussion debuff like I had when he plowed into the pillar. I checked the boss's hit points as I came to a stop. Except for the disabled hand and the gimp debuff, I barely managed to damage the tough bastard beyond a few hundred points.